So today on Online for Authors, I'm chatting with Kendra Saldana, author of Shades Between Reality and the Dream. Welcome, Kendra.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I am super excited to have you. Before we dive into the story, I want you to give my listeners a quick little elevator pitch as to what they're going to find when they open up the cover of Shades Between Reality and the Dream.
Well, you are going to get smack dabbed into James Albright's life, and it is pretty incredible, I think, because he's biracial in a time of Jim Crow. But don't worry, stay on the ride, because I promise you, it keeps rolling and gets more interesting as we go from the past to the current, to the present. And we go through two families, two generations of that families. And one is Black and one is white. And you get to experience through their eyes, they're striving for the American dream. And of course, that means different things to different people.
Absolutely. I really enjoyed the book. I loved figuring out how these families were going to connect. Everything about it was really great. But before we dive into the book, I want to talk about how you and I met. So Kendra sends me this email, and let me just read the first little thing. She said, I imagine you get flooded with pitches from authors looking to promote their books on your Online for Authors podcast. Surprise, I'm another one. And it made me laugh. And so I wanted to say, first of all, I love that you were just so, just so real and like, hey, I'm an author too. And I love that. But what really got me and made me reach out to her right away was she signed it, sincerely, future New York Times bestseller. And I tell everyone that if you can't be someone who can promote your book, if you can't say I've written a good book and you should read it, then none of your marketing is going to matter. And Kendra, you've got that down. So I absolutely love
Thank you.
All right. So to get to the book, in my review, I start with, this is a romance, but so much more, right? And so
Absolutely.
To me, it's a hard look at like racism and classism, because we see both of those things. And like what happens when people kind of refuse to stay in the boxes that other people are trying to put them in. And
yes.
Sometimes what happens is good and sometimes what happens isn't. And there's just a lot of stuff. What made you decide to not just write, your standard romance, but to go ahead and throw in these societal issues?
Well, the funny thing is, years ago, when Oprah Winfrey still had her show, she had a show about interracial relationships. And what blew my mind was that in the late 1980s, I want to say it was even 1989, that people had such visceral reactions to the interracial relationship. And I thought, it's 1989. Why is this still an issue? So it sparked something in me to want to do a romance story based on that.
Yeah.
But then it occurred to me, it's bigger than that. Because why is there such visceral reaction to seeing a Black person and a white person in a relationship with one another? Where is that coming from? So that is what made me want to dive deeper than that.
One of the things that I found fascinating in your book was the fact that kind of reaction, oh, I can't believe you're doing that, didn't just come from one side. It came from both. There were the white people who were saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're doing this. And there were the Black people who were saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe you were doing this. I always, in my mind, I always thought it was a one-sided thing, that it was a white thing and that people were looking at it that way. And then in this book, we see that it was on both sides.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I had not realized that was a thing. So I found that to be a very fascinating aspect of the book.
And that's exactly why it was told from the first person perspective, because a lot of times we only see things through what we ourselves
Right.
experience.
Right.
And what I like to explain about why I told the book the way that I did is because you can be at a four-way intersection and four people on those four corners can see an accident, but all four people are going to have a totally different story as to what happened. And it's not that anybody is lying, it's just their own perspective of what happened
Absolutely.
from the angle that they saw it.
Absolutely. So this is crazy. Years and years ago, I was a bank teller and I had to go through bank teller training. And one of the things that they did was we were standing in a fake bank and someone walks in who supposedly is going to rob us. And you have like 15 seconds of interaction with this person. And then they remove him. And then you have to write down what you saw. And there were like, I don't know, 12 of us in this class. And there were 12 different descriptions of this man. Now he was in the same room with all of us. He was anywhere from 5'6" to 6'6". He was slender, he was heavy, he had facial hair, he was different colors. It was amazing to me. And so you're right. That idea of we take our biases into, and we don't even know we have the biases. I don't mean bias in even a bad way. We all have bias.
Absolutely.
Because we've lived life a certain way. That's all we know.
That's all we know.
Right.
It's kind of like there's that scene between Shauna, Kimberly, and when Kimberly first introduces the character named Monifa, and Shauna is examining the difference between Kimberly and Monifa, because Kimberly is a more fair-skinned Black person. Monifa is a very dark-skinned Black person. And they both come from totally different class backgrounds. So she's evaluating them through her own perception. And she is not aware that she's doing anything wrong until Kimberly calls her out on it and says, Shauna, you're being rude. You're being so rude.
And she's like,
what?
What? Yeah. Yeah. I think that happens a lot where, we only know what we know. And sometimes what we need to do is like shut up and listen, because someone is telling us what they experience. And you're like, how can that be true? Like, I don't see that from and I don't, but it doesn't mean it's not true. It means I don't see it. Right. And so it's a crazy thing. The other thing that I thought was interesting is you brought up like different characters weren't Black enough. Like people would say things about you're not, or you're too Black. Like there was the one character whose mother always told her, you're just too dark. You're too dark. Right.
Yes.
And then you've got the multiracial Black woman who is light skinned and often called, things like Princess Diana and other things, right? Who, right? That the idea that you don't quite fit that mold.
Yes.
And so racism can actually come from within your own race, where people look at you and say, you're not enough of whatever it is that we use to determine this is what you are.
Exactly. And that was an important thing to point out too, that even within your own group, even within your own class of people, because when you look at Wade Kirkland, and he was explaining his background when he first met Suzanne Alexander. And he says he goes to this Ivy League college. So when he comes back to his working class Irish neighborhood, oh, you must be a queer. Oh, you must, like, something's wrong with him. Or you forgot where you came from. So he's within his own community. And they're telling him, oh, you're not one of us anymore because you go to this fancy schmancy Ivy League school. So something must be wrong with you.
Right. But those at the Ivy League school look at him and say, there must be something wrong with you because you have to work to even stay here and you're on a scholarship and you don't belong here. And so he's trapped between spaces.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I find that those nuances are very important because that's who we are as human beings. We are not a monolith of anything. Wade Kirkland is he's not just an Irish immigrant's child. he has his own nuances. And when we talk about perspective, he's bringing his working class Irish immigrant insecurities into his relationship with
Absolutely.
Suzanne. So his perception is always that I'm less than. They're never going to see me as equal.
Right.
That's
And
his
so,
whole.
so even if they're not doing it,
Yes.
it happens.
Yes.
Right. And so I think what's crazy is sometimes we see that they are doing it to him. And so
Oh, yeah.
he's accurate. And then there are other times where I don't think they were doing it to him, but he believed they were because they have in the past and he expects them to. And so now he sees everything like you said that to me. And that must mean when in reality, that isn't what she meant at all. But
yeah, and he believes it wholeheartedly.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even when there's a scene with him and Kimberly in a limousine, and he's making these assumptions based on his own personal experience,
right.
And she's like, "What? Like,
what are
that's
you
not
talking
even in
about?"
her head.
Right. I think that don't we all do that to one another though?
Yes.
Where we just make an assumption. I assume something about Kendra because of whatever experiences that I've had, and I'm probably wrong, but I don't know it. Or I make an assumption and then find out later it's like, oh, I was really off base there. And like, how did I ever come to that conclusion? And I think some people do it on purpose, but I think
Absolutely.
a lot of people don't. I think a lot of people,
so
they
too.
just kind of walk through like it. I don't think it should give them a pass, but I think they're walking through life like, like they just don't, you know what I mean? They're not being malicious. They're just being airheaded. They just don't look. I just found it fascinating because you brought in race, you brought in class, you brought in mixing races and classes, you brought in how it works and how it doesn't, who it works with and who it doesn't work with, and how you've got people who are for you and against you on literally all sides.
Absolutely. And I think it was very important to show that because that is real life. We're going to always come into contact with conflicts from different things. It doesn't necessarily have to be racial. It doesn't necessarily have to be a class thing, but we're always going to come in contact with some kind of conflict somewhere. And talking about perception. So Brent Kirkland, he's tall, he's handsome, he's gorgeous. He is the campus hottie. Every girl on campus wants him. And on top of everything else, he's America's prince, right? He comes from this great background. So you're already looking at him thinking you already know who he is. Oh, yeah, he's a pampered white boy, comes from money, he don't have no worries. What could he possibly, what could possibly be wrong with him, right? And then you learn as you go on, everything you see again is not necessarily.
No.
So their perception of him in the outside world is so not what he's thinking about when he's looking at himself in the mirror, because he had so many self-esteem issues.
Right. I mean, he's got daddy issues. He's got daddy issues. He's got mommy issues. He's got sister issues. He's got, all of these things that have affected who he is and what he believes about himself. Right.
Absolutely.
And then he starts dating someone who is interracial. She's black, I guess black and white, right?
Well, I mean, technically her father's the one that's biracial. Yeah.
But I mean, so she's black and he's white, and all of a sudden, all of those insecurities of his come like flying out because people start to point at him and say, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
And he doesn't know.
Yeah.
He's like, I wasn't doing anything. I was dating someone that I fell in love with.
Exactly. And that's why we spend time with them on their journey of falling in love, because it was important for you, the reader, to see what that attraction was in the beginning, and then how other people started perceiving what was just simply them falling in love with each other. And that's all it was. Neither
Right.
one of them were trying to make a statement. Neither one of them were doing, oh, you're just attracted to her because she's Black, or you're just attracted to him because it had nothing to do with that. It
No.
had absolutely nothing to do with that.
Those things were incidental. His
Yeah,
his looks and his wealth and her looks and her wealth, they were incidental to one another. They didn't even, but it's not what other people see. You know.
absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely. And because she was so fair skinned to the point where she looks similar to her dad. I mean, she has a little tint to her skin, which lets you know she's not really white. But because of that, people again perceive her as, well, you must be with him because you're trying to pass, or you
Yes.
must be with him because you don't want to be Black. That becomes the
Right.
perception on her end.
Right.
And for
Right.
him, it's like, okay, well, you tried this one, you tried that one, redheads, this, that. Oh, you're just with her because you're just experimenting now. You're just experimenting with Black girls now. Like
Yeah.
that's what they're getting.
And
And
he's like, whoa, wait, I never even really thought about the fact that she was Black. And she's going, whoa, wait, I've never once said I wanted to be white.
yep,
But people make the perceptions. So she also has some really good friends, and she has some problems with these friends on occasion because they really push her and say things like, you're not Black enough.
yep,
You think you're something hot and special. You think that you're, and she's like, but then she also does things that are perceived so incorrectly. Like she gave a gift to
yes,
someone, and I think that at the time she was honestly trying to be kind,
absolutely,
right? Like I
absolutely,
don't think she had ulterior motives, but it wasn't taken that way by the person who got the gift.
absolutely.
They
Yeah, she
saw
called her.
they saw it more as a, you thought you were so good and hot, and here you were going to give a gift to this lowly Black girl, kind
Right.
of thing. And it's like, I don't think that was what was on her mind at all.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But how it was perceived, again, how it was perceived was based on that character's own
Right.
individual experiences.
Right.
So she took that into it, and it's like, okay, this was just a genuine gift. And even when Kimberly kind of like to smooth over some issues that she had with her two Black friends, she buys them each a gift when they go shopping at the mall. And they perceived it as her trying to buy their friendship. And she's like, no, I'm just showing appreciation for it. It has
Yes.
nothing to do with me trying to buy you.
Right. And it's crazy because I think, once again, don't we all do that, where someone does something and you immediately assign, well, they must be trying to buy me, or they must be trying to butter me up, or they must be trying to whatever. And it's like, or they're being nice, right?
Imagine that.
Imagine that. Imagine that. So are these characters completely fictional, made up in your head, or are they patterned after people you know?
They're not patterned after people I know per se. So my grandmother was she was great at, relaying certain experiences she had. And she had told me, it was just a little inkling of something when she had told me a cousin of hers knew of a Caribbean woman who worked for this wealthy white family on the Upper East Side. And they pretty much treated her like part of the family, gave her whatever they had left over or didn't want to use or whatever, and she would still go home to her family, but she basically lived with them. And I found that so interesting. I was like, I wonder what her life is like. I wonder how that came to be. So that's where the character of Ellie came from. It's
Yeah.
just a little,
Yeah.
I mean, there's no details that I ever
Right.
received from about that. But I created Ellie because I just found that fascinating, very fascinating. And then for James's character, he really represents a lot more people than people think or that people are even willing to own. There's this book called One Drop.
Mhm.
Forgive me, I forget the author.
That's okay. We'll
Um,
look it up.
but it was about her dad and how her dad passed for white his whole entire life. He was a very well known writer. And it wasn't until his deathbed that he shared with her that he had passed his whole life as white. So it totally upended her whole life because she's like, wait a minute, wait a minute. But the thing that was so interesting to me about that was her dad had married a white woman, of course. And once she found out that he was actually biracial, she went and did a DNA test. And her brother, because their mom was Swedish with blonde hair, blue eyes, her brother came out looking like their mom, blonde hair, blue
Right.
eyes. When they did the DNA test, her brother came out 2% more African than her. And she was the one with the dark hair like her dad. And I thought that that was hilarious that her
Right.
brother was like 17% African and she was only like
15 or 14 or whatever.
15%.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so funny to me. I was like,
Right.
so again, what you think is not always so anyway, that was one of the things that inspired me. So, and definitely with characters like Chantel is one of those characters from Brooklyn. I kind of sort of patterned her a little bit after one of my cousins. One of my cousins, very feisty, very willing to always fight about something or other. That was just her when she was younger.
She's going to get
And
out the bat, right? She's going to be
oh
the one
yeah,
with
she's
the
getting
bat.
that bat out. Or even if she doesn't have a weapon at hand, oh, she has no problem fist fighting.
Right. Right.
But it's never unprovoked. I mean, she's not just some crazy person out there starting fights. It's never unprovoked. So that character definitely had some basis. But the thing that I found interesting is that the characters have become so real to people who read it. They think this has got to be real. This has got to be real. Like this.
Right.
But the
Right.
only similarities were like the Kirklands, which was really the Alexanders. Um, a little wink, wink was given to the Kennedy family. So in terms of Prince,
Right.
Brent being the American equivalent of a prince,
Right.
I loved JFK Jr. And he always seemed to carry himself with grace, despite all the stuff that he was carrying in terms of his heritage. He always carried himself with grace. And so Brent is just a little wink at
Right.
JFK Jr.
Right. Right. So I love that as an author where we're able to take someone we know or a characteristic of someone we know and then create it and expand it and move it around and let it become whatever it is that we want it to become. So it sounds like that's what you do too. You use people in your life, but not completely, just this
Absolutely.
piece or that piece of them, which is wonderful. When someone walks away from your book, other than saying, wow, this was a really good book, what do you want them to walk away with?
Now, with this, because it has so many different nuances, well, one of the things that I like to tell people is if you just want a good story, I pray. You just wanted escapism, you just wanted
You can
a
give it
good
here. Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, I pray I give you that. But for those people who like to delve a little deeper and like to just look at all the little nuances and symbolism, what I what I want is what I said in the preface of the book, which is I want you to think about how you move in the world and what it is that you can change. Because I like to tell people change really begins when you look in the mirror. It's all about what you project
Right.
and how you move in your life that impacts other people. So I really just want people to walk away inspired, not just reading a good book, not just falling in love with the characters, but to really be inspired about how they move in their own life and how they have empathy for people who may not be, who may not look like them, worship like them, fall in love the kind of way that you think a person, what love should look like for someone. But you have a little bit more empathy as you walk through the world and you're willing to listen to someone who has a different experience from yours.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's absolutely wonderful. I want to know what the reaction has been to the book so far. Have you had anyone who has given you any grief over the inner relations or or has it just been overwhelmingly positive for you?
Well, once the book came out, it was overwhelmingly positive. But
Good.
when I was at a job, when I was still working on a book, it's so interesting that you said that. There was a black girl I was working with, and I just mentioned I was doing an interracial love story and that it was being told from the first person. And she said, really condescendingly, how can you tell a story from a white person's perspective and you're not white? So that was the only one
Yeah.
that gave me a negative whatever. And my response to her was, I'm telling a human story. It's a
Yes.
human story. So if you're telling it from a human perspective and if you are blessed enough to come across people from all walks of life, then you can tell that story. The only time that it's disingenuous is when you're trying to tell a story that you have no connection to,
Right.
you know. But for the most part, once the book was out, it was love, love, love. I was
Oh, good.
really
Good.
overwhelmed. I really was overwhelmed and humbled that so many people loved it so much. And I get compliments from people who read it for the first time. Like, wow, I didn't even like they tell me I knew it was going to be good because I know you, but I had no idea it was going to be this good.
Right.
And one of my
Right.
best friends, she has told me, she said, Kendra, I'm not saying this because you're my friend. She was like, this is my favorite book of all time. I swear, even if I didn't know the person who wrote it, this is my favorite book.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm so glad that you've had that. I did have someone, I wrote a book about people in Ukraine, and this was
Hmm.
before the current Ukrainian crisis. So it was just really crazy when it came out. It came out 1 month before the crisis happened.
Wow.
But I had someone tell me they were disappointed to learn that I was not Ukrainian and that they would no longer read anything that I wrote. And I
Really?
thought, okay, but like you, I feel the same way. Yes, I was writing a Ukrainian, but I was writing a woman. I was writing a woman. She happened to live in Ukraine.
Right.
And she did have some experiences that I've not had, but I've had loss and I've had pain and I've had all of those things that I could understand. I think that the problem comes with is if I tried to write a character and I relied on stereotypes only,
Exactly.
and then you're doing a disservice. But as long as you're making your character fully three-dimensional and like you said, human, having a human experience out in this world, I think that you can kind of navigate across races, across nationalities, across sexes, across, otherwise I could only write about 62-year-old white women who are middle class. I mean, do you know what I'm saying? I'd be
Exactly.
rather limited. And I liked the fact that I like what you said, that you were writing about humans.
So it's a kind of a fun fact. I was in this writers group when I first came to Charlotte, and it just coincidentally, I happened to be the only Black person in the writers group, and we were all to read the first 2 pages of our what we were working on, and this was Shades Between Reality and a Dream. And when I finished, everybody was looking at me, and they were quiet, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, this might have been too much. Maybe it's too much. Maybe it's not good. Maybe I need to go back to the drawing board. Like, I don't know about it. So then one of the ladies that was sitting in the back, she was actually crying. And she said, oh my gosh. She was like, I have felt that. I know exactly what James's mother must have felt like. She's like, because I've been isolated from my family and a lot of people look at me as different. And I was like, thank you, God. That was what I was
That
trying
was
to
it.
hit.
Right.
And
It was, you did have something like color, but it doesn't have to be color. It can be anything.
yes. And I
Right.
love that it hit her the way that it was supposed to, that
Right.
you weren't just reading it as, James telling you about his Black mother. She listened to it from the perspective of a human experience that
Yes,
she could identify with. And I love
absolutely.
that.
I love
I
that as
love
well.
that.
So
I love
Kendra,
that.
I hope this is not the last of what you're going to write. So what are you working on now?
So what I'm working on now is a story. It's it's the layering of three different fictitious music artists and their story. So it's called a layered melody, and it's basically about the music industry, but not what you think. It's not a expose. It's not a try to guess who this is. It's more of a what would happen if you could spend a day with your favorite music artist, and once they're off the stage, once they're by themselves, who is that person?
Right.
What made that person who they are? Because a lot of times, and especially in our society, again, it's perspective. We look at these successful people, Beyonce, Taylor Swift, whoever, Tom Cruise, whoever the big celebrity is. And you're thinking you know who that person is
Yeah, and you
because
only know their
they're
you
such
only
a
know the screen
huge.
part of them, right? You don't really know
Yes, you don't
them.
know who they
Right.
really are when the cameras are not rolling, when there's no fans around. What makes that person who they are? So that's who these three individuals are. One, two of them are males, one of them is a female, one is like the heartthrob, the other one is like the behind the scenes producer guy who doesn't really want to be in the spotlight. And then the other one is a super, super beautiful woman, but she's always characterized by her sexiness, but she wants you to see her as a whole artist and not just a pretty,
Not a
sexy face.
package. Right.
Exactly. So that's what I'm working
Fantastic.
on next.
And when do you hope to have it available to all of us who are dying to read your next work?
This should be available by midsummer. I would say it should be available
Fantastic.
by midsummer. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And
So
I'm
hey guys,
excited for this one because these characters have lived with me for a long time.
yeah.
And my sister even told me, she was like, "You got to share this. You got to get this out." But in my mind, I was thinking, these are fictitious celebrities. Who's going to care about these people? And then once I got I don't know, the idea that was sparked as to how to get you to care about them, it was like, yes, I got it.
Yes, I
So
know.
now
Don't you
I'm
love it?
excited. I'm
Super.
excited. I'm excited.
Super, super. So, hey guys, if you want to continue this conversation, head on over to Novels and Latte Book Club on Facebook. There you will have a chance to win a digital copy of Shades Between Reality and the Dream. All you have to do is tell me something you liked or learned during this conversation, and you will be in the drawing. So, Kendra, if someone wants to get up with you, talk with you about your books, your writing, that kind of thing, what's the best way to reach you?
The best way to reach me is through Instagram. Honestly, I stay on Instagram often. My handle is bxfuerte, which is BXFUERTE. But of course, you can look me up under Kendra Saldana as well. And I also have a Kendra Saldana authors page on Facebook. So that's the best way to hit me up.
Fantastic. And I'll have that in the show notes, guys. So definitely, reach out to Kendra. Grab a copy of her book. You will not be disappointed. Once you have read it, make sure you review it, because as authors, we absolutely love those reviews. Right. And Kendra, I want to thank you so much for being with me today. This has been wonderful.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed it, and I look so forward to it. So for so long, it was like, yes, it's finally here. But thank you.
Thank you for listening to Online for Authors, where I, Terry M. Brown, author of character-driven fiction and host of the podcast, introduce readers to characters they'd love to invite to lunch. Tune in next Tuesday for another podcast episode.